Hello, I'm Bob Ganzak, and welcome to MotivationU the Podcast. Welcome to MotivationU the Podcast. My name is Bob Ganzak, and we're coming to you live from here within Celebration Point at the beautiful, the absolutely incredible Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, right here in the Coach's Podcast Room. If you have not traveled to Spurrier's Gridiron Grill yet, you are really missing something. It's just one of those places that I don't know how you would say it. It's just like, I like to use the word iconic. It could be that. On top of that, it has incredible food. Farm to table, fresh, incredible food, and drinks and people and the staff. Andrew, the general manager, and everybody here. It's just absolutely awesome. And you'll probably even go upstairs to Visors, the little bar up on top. It's kind of an outdoor rooftop feel that has a retractable roof. You can go watch some sports there, and you might even catch the old ball coach there with his wife one day, because they got their own chairs with their names on them, so you want to take that. Well, what are we doing today? We are going to talk about the hammer and the nail, leadership. This program is about leadership. It's about finding those leaders in our communities who are making things happen, maybe not on the scale of the global giants, maybe not the Bill Gates and the individuals that ilk, yet there are leaders that are doing very similar jobs, making huge impacts on your community, on my community, all over the country. And that's what this show is about. It's about finding those individuals that make that impact. And one of the things that I was reading lately was the old adage, it comes from many different places, of the hammer and the nail. And when you think of leadership, you can draw from this analogy. Back in like 1966, when it really became famous in modern times, Albert Maslow has said that if all you have is a hammer, every single thing you have to work with looks like a nail. So it's just that analogy of, as a leader, of having a larger toolbox, a larger group of things to draw from. You can't always go into every problem with the same exact situation. So you want to have a variety, a way of holding things. We used to look for leaders back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. They were looking for leaders that had a C word that was called competitive. That's like the Jimmy Buffett song, where he sings in one of his songs that he says that, the world leaders are, old white men that draw analogies to everything to football. Well, today we want people that can collaborate. We want individuals that can bring people together from different walks of life in different situations. And that brings us really to what we're going to be talking about today with my guest. And in a few minutes here, we're going to have Stephanie Stuckey, the CEO of Stuckey's, on with us. And we're going to discuss that collaboration side of that way of leadership, where it's it's not just profits. It's people. It's the earth. It's taking care of others and helping the environment and everybody else and leading to those profits. So we'll have that discussion also. So we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll have Stephanie Stuckey with us. This is MotivationU the Podcast.
We still hear it. The sound of victory. The joy of being part of something great. And while things may not be the same right now, we haven't gone anywhere. If you bleed orange and blue, then Meldon Law is the firm for you.
Hello, Bob Ganzak for the Dale Carnegie course. Because of the great strength that we've had in the last couple of classes here, we are having another Dale Carnegie class starting September 21st, Tuesday night, the 21st, from 6 until 9:30 at Hotel Indigo. It's one of those things that's going to change your life. It's going to really give you the tools where you can improve at business, in your relationships, just in your love of life. So you will be able to sign up at jacksonville.dalecarnegie.com, find courses, find the one that is for September 21st in Gainesville. Hotel Indigo, 6 to 9:30. 8 weeks in a row, incredible energy, atmosphere. You'll love it. Sign up today for the Dale Carnegie class. Thank you.
Looking for more reasons to celebrate? We have them here at Celebration Point. Enjoy some of the newest additions to our already celebratory lineup, like Dave & Buster's, Les Macarons, and Prime and Pearl. There's always a reason to celebrate. Join us anytime for any occasion. Celebration Point, where Gators come to celebrate.
Welcome back to MotivationU the Podcast, here from Coach's Podcast Room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill at Celebration Point, exit 384 on I-75. If you're ever going down this way, make sure you stop in and check out the museum or just have some food. It's awesome. With me today is the CEO of Stuckey's, Miss Stephanie Stuckey, and we are so happy to have you here. And Stephanie, I know that you are a Georgia grad and a Bulldog through your heart, so I apologize for this spot right here. But to let you know that, as I said when we were off air, my wife probably won't enjoy that either because she is a Bulldog also. So
awesome. I like her already. Not only that, she's good taste in men. Good taste in teams and men. So, no, but I think it's fabulous that you're on an interstate exit at a location that doesn't just offer food, but there's an experience. You have a museum, and that's very appropriate for conversation with Stuckey's and about what we do.
Well, I am so excited about this. My family started coming south from Detroit in probably 61. Every year we'd go down to Clearwater Beach, Florida. And I knew that, my dad always stopped at the Stuckey's. Wherever there was a Stuckey's, that's where he stopped. And I never had a discussion with him about it. But knowing him, he's passed away now, but knowing him, it was probably a comfortable place for him. He liked comfortable places that he felt welcome. And that was kind of what the beginning of Stuckey's is, share with us the history of how your grandfather started it. What was the concept and where it's traveled over the years?
I'd be happy to, but first I just want to say thank you for sharing that story. And I think it is that feeling that has given our brand stickiness despite really hard times. People don't remember the products that they bought necessarily. Sure, they'll remember our pecan lager and some of our kitschy souvenirs, but they really remember that feeling and how our stores were so much wrapped up in that overall road trip experience. Just like you said, you started sharing your memory of Stuckey's by talking about getting on the road. And that's what our brand is. We are intertwined with the history of the road trip and the history of this country, really. So trip in the Wayback Machine to 1937 during the Great Depression. My grandfather dropped out of the University of Georgia to work on the family farm. They were out of money. His side hustle was selling pecans and a little shed on the side of the road. He got a $35 loan from his grandmother. He rejiggered a Model A and kind of made it, Model A Ford, made it sort of a bit of a makeshift truck, and he would haul the pecans and he would sell them on the side of the road. And he very quickly learned, like any entrepreneur does, you're offering something, you're filling a need, you're solving a problem that people have. And the problem he was solving is a problem your dad and many other motorists have. They want a safe, reliable, consistent, hospitable place to pull over when they're traveling. And back then, there really wasn't a brand doing that. We were the first roadside retail chain, and we offered gas, clean restrooms, a quick hot snack. We had meals, but it's like hot dogs. It was food on the go. It was affordable. And then, of course, our fun souvenirs. We had everything from snow globes, your typical souvenirs, to the candies and the pecans that we made ourselves. So always at our core has been the pecan. And at our peak, the company grew to 368 stores in 40 states. My grandfather sold the company. There was a succession of corporate ownership that frankly trashed the brand. And we plummeted when the road trip plummeted. My father got the company back in 1985, so he's right at the sinking ship. But he and all his business partners retired in 2012. They sold their main company to Warren Buffett, and they all retired and left Stuckey's being run by a skeleton crew. And Stuckey started to falter again. And we were losing money starting around 2016 forward. And that's when my dad's former business partners came to me. I've had a very different career. We can get into that, but I was not raised in the business.
No, you
and
were not.
They came to me. It was purely a transaction. It was, do you want to buy our shares of Stuckey's? And then next thing I knew, I sunk my life savings and was CEO because they didn't have a CEO.
Well, Stephanie,
so there you go.
You did that in 2019. And we had
November.
Yep, November of 2019, and then January, February of 2020, pandemic hits. I mean,
right. Bad timing.
I mean, how did you navigate? What was going on inside when that? Because we all had the fear of, oh my goodness, here's this disease. We are feeling that inside for our own health. And then individuals like yourself and some other people that we've spoken to over the last few weeks who just started a new company at that time had another stressful side of it. What was going on inside when February of 2020 came about and everything started falling apart?
Well, I think I drew on lessons from our company. We really are the epitome of resilience, and we were founded during the Great Depression. So we're no stranger to really hard times. We survived World War II when sugar and gas were rationed. People weren't traveling on the interstate and we couldn't get our key ingredient. And my grandfather somehow figured out how to pivot and survive. And what he did was he started providing candy to the troops. And you can get sugar if you're providing candy to the troops. And so we survived World War II. And not only that, the definition of resilience is not just to bounce back, but to bounce back stronger. And that's exactly what he did. He ended up manufacturing. Before, they just made candy on site at the stores. And so they had all these little kitchens in the locations. He built a manufacturing plant. Suddenly there's this whole new line of business. Then the interstate highway system got built. Circa 1956, started bypassing all of his stores.
Yes,
That's devastating, right? And what did he do? He made a strategic decision. He moved his stores to the interstate, and he didn't just build back, he built back stronger. He created a consistent look, feel, and design to the stores that had not been there earlier. There were 50 different architectural styles, and he really owned the interstate. He's like, okay, I'm going to be the first out there. I'm going to be on every major exit. I'm going to figure out what exits are the best. I'm going to get out there ahead of this. And so I just drew on inspiration, knowing, like, if you're a brand that has been around a long time, you're used to these ups and downs. It's in your DNA. You're in it for the long haul. Yes, a global pandemic sucks, but you can sit around and have a pity party, or you can say, all right, how are we going to pivot? How are we going to grow back stronger? So we got on the internet. We were on the internet, but just barely. Just the site was sad. And we invested the very few dollars we had into revamping our site, getting on Amazon, pushing our product to third-party retailers that were doing well. And our big audacious move was, I got a business partner to help me. We joined forces and we bought a manufacturing facility. So that was our game changer. So instead of relying on all these other manufacturers to make our product, and there's just been such incredible supply chain shutdowns and slowdowns. So we're making the product ourselves. So yes, we still have dependent on others for ingredients and packaging. So there are continuous challenges, but it's gotten a lot easier making product ourselves. So it's just, you pivot and you figure it out. And frankly, we're growing back stronger as a result, because now we went from 300 retail partners, about that amount, to we're now about at 3,000.
Wow. Fantastic.
We're selling to other groups.
A lot of that has been your effort too. I mean, it's like, where's Waldo? Stephanie's on the road going, where is she today? Where is she tomorrow? Where was she yesterday? And how is that being received by your staff in those towns where you're visiting those stores personally?
Well, I would love to say that they just roll out the red carpet and they're super excited to see me. But the reality is, I bought a failing company that was 6 figures in debt. And what had once been a franchise program was in complete disarray. We don't even own or operate any of our stores. We don't even have a franchise system. We have a licensing program. So I would visit these stores. I would call them in advance and tell them I was coming. And quite often they were like, so, or I'm not kidding. Some of these stores looked sad. They were in really bad shape. We've had to debrand a couple, to be honest. And some of them look amazing, and the owners were terrific, and they really did say welcome, and we took photos, and I talked to the employees, and we had a wonderful time. So we had those experiences. Most of them were somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. I talked to the manager, the owners out of town. You may have seen this trend in roadside retail establishments. Most of the owners and managers are from other countries. They're new Americans. You get a lot from Pakistan and a lot from India. And so they didn't grow up in America. They're all American citizens now, but they didn't grow up in this country. So they really don't have a connection with Stuckey's. It was just a brand that they had some access to. So a lot of it has really been sort of telling them, like, here's the history of our brand, and figuring out ways that we can connect and they can understand what our vision is and we can understand what their challenges are. So it's been a process. Most of the stores, I have to do several sweeps to really build those relationships. It's been rough.
It's not a franchise. I was under the assumption it was. Now, I'm in the Dale Carnegie world too, and being a franchisee out of Jacksonville, we went through that transition probably in 2010, 11, 12. There never was a quote unquote franchise system in Dale Carnegie until that time. They were sponsors.
Yeah.
They had the right to deliver the Dale Carnegie product. And now we are franchisees, which, now we work directly with DC&A, Dale Carnegie and Associates, in that realm. So that's kind of the world that you travel in, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I've had to take a crash course in franchise and licensing law. I'm an attorney by training and practiced environmental law most recently. So I had to sort of pivot, and of course we hired outside counsel. So you understand the distinction here. Initially a sponsorship, you have the rights to use the Carnegie name for limited purposes. You can sell the product, you can sell the classes, but you're not officially a franchisee. There's a distinction in payment structure, all of that, control. So the reality is we do not have the capacity right now to operate a franchise program, because you have to have a strong operations system. You have to have boots on the ground, people that can really manage the stores. And we don't have that. And so it's unrealistic, and it's setting everyone up for failure to do something that's getting beyond our capacity. So we knew what we could do. We could produce product that's top quality, that's befitting the brand. And then we're being very thoughtful. We're looking for store locations that are already well run and saying, here, you can just sell our product. We'll give you the right to use some signage with our name, and we'll help you with some displays. We'll help promote you via our social media networks, but there's no upfront fee, which is what you would see with a franchise.
Correct.
There's no operations manual. There's no ops director. So we're giving them wholesale discounted access to our product and limited use of the trademark. And it's working. There are so many brands out there, not brands, there's so many small convenience store chains on the interstate highway that are trying to be competitive with these large chains. And so how do they find their niche? And so many of them, I love what you said at the beginning before I was on about, maybe I'm not Warren Buffett or Jeff Bezos or a major company, but small businesses are the backbone of this economy. We're 90% of the economy. The Microsofts and the multi-billion-dollar companies of the world are amazing, but the backbone of business are these mom and pops, or just mom, or just one.
Yeah, that's right.
We are what really is the engine of America. And so I want to try to support those other businesses. It is a collaboration. We are working together. If we rise, they rise, and vice versa. And so I'm looking for brands that share, not brands, but locations that share our love of roadside America, that are hardworking, that have high standards, and let's grow together. That's sort of where we are. And then we're selling our product to retailers as well.
Well, you wrote an article, maybe a blog or something about a year ago, and you highlighted in there 3 companies that were like those bounce back companies, Levi's, Converse, and Domino's.
Yeah.
What have you drawn to Stuckey's from what they have done to bounce back in their business? What are you, bringing to your company that you found in researching them that they had done?
Well, I'll start with Domino's, because I think they are such an amazing example of resilience in what you do when you suffer really a bad PR black eye. I think many of us remember when there was this Domino Gate or whatever they called it, but they were getting terrible reviews. People were saying their pizza crust tasted like cardboard and their sauce tasted like ketchup. And there were videos that went viral of employees just like doing
bad stuff.
Pizzas. I mean, it was a nightmare. And what they did, I thought, was absolutely brilliant. The CEO personally got involved. He said, I'm sorry. And you're right. Our product could be better. And we're going to bring in a chef. We're going to have top quality pizzas. we're going to address your problems. We're listening to you. And they turned it around. So, and if you haven't watched The Food That Built America, by the way, I am addicted to that show on the History Channel. You're nodding.
I raised
Watch
my
it.
hand.
Yeah.
Yes.
They do a lot of wars. I think people like the competition, like the Cola Wars and Kellogg and Post cereal battling it out. And so they had, Domino's and Pizza Hut, Pizza Wars.
Oreo cookies. That one was good too.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Like I didn't recognize like the real Oreo is really not Oreo. They kind of stole it. By the way, we're about to have a cameo from my cat.
Oh, that's all right.
So Levi's is a great example of a buyout by a corporation that worked. It did not work for Stuckey's. We were trashed by our corporate buyout, but it worked for Levi's. I'm sorry, not Levi's. Converse. Sorry, Converse.
Okay.
And Converse was bought out by Nike. And you would think that might be the death knell of them because they would just get this large corporation that would just absorb their brand and make it their brand. An example of that was Tom's Peanuts got bought out by Lance. And Lance just did away with their peanut line and did Tom's peanut line and did their own peanut line. So, that's an example where they kind of do away with the brand when they acquire it. They kept on a potato chip brand, but that was it. So Nike has tons of money and pours it into marketing to make a brand that had once been so hip and so cool back again. And they had these wonderful ads that were multicultural and all ages. And they had celebrities like Kurt Cobain wearing their sneakers and turned the brand around. They had the best marketing. And I love Converse. And our vice president wears Converse. If you like her politics or not, you got to love her style. I love her style.
The Chuck Taylors, that's, we grew up with those.
It's the best. So I like that it's getting back in pop culture. You see celebrities, you see politicians, you see all walks of life. Like they embrace this wonderful brand. And then Levi's is another one that really turned around with marketing. I think it's just another example of the power of branding. And they became somewhat obsolete in the 1980s when there was this whole designer jean trend, and Brooke Shields was wearing Calvin Klein, and
right.
So suddenly Levi's was what workman or workwoman wore. It wasn't stylish, and they embraced that. They said, yeah, okay, maybe we are just this basic brand that's been around forever, but that's what makes them special. Like they're still around. They're reliable. They're dependable. Like you can always count on your Levi's. It's like me and my Levi's. It's like this comfort brand. It's a brand that frankly never goes out of style. It's always going to be there. And I think their slogan, I haven't looked at that article. I wrote it a year ago, so I'm going on my memory, but I think their slogan was, you live your life in Levi's. So kind of like, this is your life. You put these on and it's just part of just getting through the day. And so they did just beautiful ads. So
it was interesting.
Two good examples.
If individuals want to send us some questions on Facebook, feel free to do that. If you have a question for Stephanie, just type it into the the comment below the show, and we'll throw it out to Stephanie and get her answer for you. And people can hear this on Facebook Live, YouTube, 39 different podcast solutions. Make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe so you never miss an episode, because we have a lot of guests like this. We've had Coach Spurrier on. We've had a number of individuals. The mayor of Valdosta, Scott Matheson, was on with us, and a number of people. So it's really fun to do that, to have individuals on and talk about business and leadership. When we talk about leadership, Stephanie, we used to have that glass ceiling. Now, you're a CEO that is out there in corporate America. Are we seeing progress in there? Are we getting a more diverse group of people in the CEO world, or do we still have a lot of work to do?
We still have a lot of work to do. There are very few female CEOs. There are very few minority CEOs, but we do have progress. Recently, Georgia Power, they supply power to Florida, Georgia, Alabama. They have an African-American CEO recently installed. So you are seeing the trend in the right direction, but if you just look at the raw numbers, it's still just a small amount of leaders that are female owned and minority owned. You look at access to capital too. I mean, it really comes down to that if you're talking about entrepreneurship, especially. And most of the venture capital goes to white male owned businesses. That's just, those are facts.
Yeah, we're still in that world.
Stating an opinion. It's the facts. I got to this position because it's my family's business and I bought it, and I didn't get any financing for it. I sunk my life savings. That is an advantage to being an older CEO. I was 53 when I bought Stuckey's, and I had savings.
Mm-hmm. When we talk about that, now, full disclosure, I'm a father of a wonderful daughter who is climbing the business world, graduated from UF, got her MBA at Michigan, and is climbing the corporate world, and I hope someday and should be a CEO someplace. I also have 5 stepdaughters, granddaughter, so there's a lot of women.
You're outnumbered.
In my life, and so this is a big concern to me. Are you treated differently in the corporate world because of what you are instead of who you are?
That I have not seen, but COVID hit within 3 months of me buying Stuckey's. So I really haven't had a lot of opportunity to interact with other corporate CEOs or be in those environments. So it's really hard for me to give an answer that would make sense for what's really happening in the world. I do think what I see, like I said earlier, that the trend is going in the right direction. I think people are really trying to embrace more diversity in the workplace, whether it's a CEO or lower. And I think it's so important that you talked about your daughter and that she's rising in the ranks. That's what's so important and is often overlooked. If you just look at the raw numbers of how many female CEOs there are, it's not sunshiny and happy and unicorns and sparkles. But more importantly, and I haven't looked at this data, but how many women are on the right track to be there in 10 years, in 5 years, in 20 years? Are we at least filling that pipeline? Because I am the rarity, what I call the accidental CEO that had a different career in law and in state government and local government, and then became a CEO. Most CEOs are on a track to be in that position. And so what can you do to fill that pipeline, to encourage more women, more minorities to be on those tracks? I think that's what's so critical. And I think you really have to make an effort. You do. I'm constantly striving with that, with our vendors and our partners. And I'll look around at my business associates, with only one exception, are all white males. We have a African-American female CFO. But I'm like, can we make an effort, please, to bring in some diversity in this room?
Definitely.
We have to.
I agree with you.
And because I'm at the table, I am the one constantly saying, you do know it's a bunch of white guys in this room except for me. You do know that. Like, I love you guys. Love you all. But can we please?
Yeah. One of the...
And they're terrific. I love them. But...
Well, in my world, I spent about 30 years in the advertising business and radio broadcasting, and then the last 12 years I've been working in the training area. So a couple of things there is, when I first started in advertising, I mean, all the sales reps were men. Everybody we dealt with, the people we called on, were men. And I saw that shift probably in the mid 80s where all of a sudden I went from having a staff of 7 guys and 1 woman to having 7 women and 1 man. And, Radio Inc. and other people were, asking to interview me because, what are you doing with all these women on your staff? And what I'd like to see through the 90s was the increase in individuals that were making the decisions were women. And that was a good barometer of where we were going with that. And in training, Stephanie, I can say that our classes, when I first started being involved with Dale Carnegie, which I was a student back in 1991, it was predominantly men in the class. And now we are probably in our classes 50-50, if not 60-40 women over men that are in our classes. And I love to see that. They're being given the opportunity for advanced training and development, which they were not given that opportunity in the past. So that's
terrific.
That's something I see. We have a question.
In addition to the training, I think it's really important also to talk about fostering a work environment and a culture that is inclusive.
Yes.
And not to stereotype, but this is the reality, that my own reality and also a lot of my female friends' reality is that once you start having children, the woman is often the primary caregiver. And so making sure that you have fostered a culture and a structure within your company that is accommodating, that will allow women and men to take that time off, to have flex work hours. And COVID has actually been a godsend in that regard, because we've learned you can work from home. You can be more flexible. It can be done. So it's not just hiring women, it's keeping them. Because if you hire a woman, let's say you hire a woman in her mid-20s and she gets to be in her 30s, because nowadays women are having their babies later, especially on the career track, and she has a child or two, you want to let her take a year or 2 off if she needs it and bring her back.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I took almost a 7-year gap when I had my 2 kids. And I was in the Georgia legislature at the time. So I remained in the legislature, but I quit practicing law. I had been practicing law and serving in the legislature. Something had to give. And so there were 7 years there where I was in the legislature, but nothing else. And then when my youngest went into full-time school in pre-K, I was back at it, but I had to get a new job.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because when you have that gap, 7-year gap,
it makes it difficult, but it's a commitment, and we need to figure out a way to develop a mindset that.
Yes.
And I'm going to say something that probably somebody will step on my feet after this, is that we develop a mindset within our culture, and I mean our country culture, where our children being raised is a shared process. It should be as much daddy as it is mommy. So if mommy has to work for 3 straight weeks on a project, then daddy's going to have to be the one that takes time away from his career or works from home to be with child. It's our own fault. We made that choice. I say ours as humans in this country, that we've developed that over the years, that's the way it went. And now we need to make that shift away from that.
It is shifting. It absolutely is shifting, but it takes time, especially if you grew up with that sort of archetypal model of mom stays home. I mean, that certainly was my experience. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. So I think that's important to equally value the parenting, but also when you see that 7-year gap from being in the workplace on a resume, to be more open-minded about letting folks back into the career track.
Point.
Also, people who've been caregivers. We actually recently hired the guy who's running our warehouse, had like a 6-year gap on his resume, and he left to care for his ailing mother. until she passed away. And so he had a big gap, and recognized that there are a lot of life experiences that are part of your development. Maybe it's not necessarily what you typically see on a resume, but I learned so much from being a mom that I use in my career that people don't value.
Absolutely.
I mean, look at what women learn on PTA, and it's not all women, there are men, but my gosh, those PTA moms, they could run a third world country. They could run a military campaign. Do not underestimate the power of a PTA mom with a clipboard, because those ladies get it done. They do these fundraisers where they raise six figures in one night, these casino nights, and they organize these recycling drives to get the entire school being green and sustainable, and get the kids going on, learning chess and winning the state championship. I mean, these PTA parents kick butt. We see more of that celebrated on a resume. I'm sorry, I'm getting on my high horse, but like,
I love
really,
it. I love it.
I
love the enthusiasm.
You ladies are, and there were a few men. Y'all are amazing. It's just, but that's not valued. You don't see people like when they're introducing you. Well, she successfully organized the bake sale, but those are some great skills.
We have a question. How does somebody go about applying for a license with Stuckey's to sell your goods?
Call me. We're developing the program right now. It's actually pretty straightforward. Basically, we just set you up in our system as a vendor, as a wholesale vendor. We ask for some basic paperwork. And as far as the licensing, we just have a trademark agreement where we give you the right to use our trademark for very limited purposes. And we'll help you if you want to put up some signage. We have to approve any signage. It's very straightforward. We have a designer we use if you want us to bring in our designer, if you've got a designer, and that's it. We give you wholesale pricing. Yeah, we give you suggested retail price, but because it's not a franchise, you have a lot of latitude. We're not going to come in and micromanage your operations. There's no upfront fee, and you have the right to sell our product. Now, what we're working on is, can we do a curated product line that you can only get with our licensees? We're trying to develop that to give a little extra value to being in that program. But we do have some beautiful displays. We can set up a full program for you that's turnkey ready, as far as, you want 250 square feet within your store that's going to really have a nice look. And we can get you candy, snacks, and merchandise. And we have 80 years of roadside retail experience. I will say our space is roadside retail. So the licensing program is not like a general store. If you're a general store, we'll say you are candy, but if you're looking for like that program of being a roadside establishment, that's what we know, roadside retail. And it's a different type of product that people buy when they're traveling.
So was there, I didn't write this question down, but it's just my curiosity of when Grandpa put the places out on the highway, were there more going south or more going north?
I don't know the answer to that. I wish he were still living, because I guarantee you he would know. I
know he's probably thought about it.
Yes, I do know what I've heard, the story I heard about him was that I think I know he generally preferred to have our stores heading north on the right side of the exit, because he thought through this very carefully, and he actually sat in the stores and talked to people and paid attention. Most of our travelers were coming from the north on vacation in Florida. Back in the day, people didn't fly. And Florida was really a huge vacation destination. There's so many, and there still are so many amusement parks and places in Florida that you could go. It's warm climate. So people would start off north, go to Florida for their vacation. Well, on the way to vacation, they didn't want to spend their money. They were saving their money for the hotel, for the food, for all the attractions. So they were saving up their money. And so they wouldn't spend money going on vacation. But when they were done with their vacation, heading north, heading home,
they
had some money left over. Yeah, and then they don't want to fill up their car. during the vacation, like, oh, we all the stuff. So my grandfather located most of the stores on the right side. He would try to get us on a hill so you could see it coming from a distance. And he really didn't want you crossing over, because the more inconvenient it is for people to pull over, especially, this is a bit of a stereotype. Usually dads want to make time and moms want to pull over. Dad's like, no, I'll have to cross over. So he would have us on the right, heading north on a slope.
That was my thought, is that there would probably be more on the north. And I'm sure that when the McDonald's and the Burger Kings and the Burger Chefs and all of those companies started coming in, they probably, I don't know this for a fact, but they probably looked at your grandfather's model to say, what can we learn from what this man has done with Stuckey's as we start putting, in the 50s, start putting our stores out into the world? I'm sure that
I think
was
they all learn from each other.
That was probably something.
My grandfather was friends with Kemmons Wilson, who founded Holiday Inn.
Okay.
And my grandfather would put Stuckey's next to Holiday Inns. They both had a good eye for roadside real estate, and they also realized it made sense to co-locate because sometimes you want to pull over for the night, but you want to be right next to a Stuckey's. You could go there first thing in the morning and get your King of the Road breakfast special for 99 cents, load up and get in the car.
So get going. Inexpensive, quick,
co-locate.
trusty. So the pecan log roll, is that Grandma's
Yes.
recipe?
Yeah.
And how did that develop?
It's a classic Southern confection. I've had a lot of people approach me and say, oh, we have the pecan log roll recipe. I have no doubt that they do. It's like Divinity and Pralines and some of the other classics that we sell. We just really became known for the pecan log roll. I think it's a distinctive item, and we sold the heck out of those over the years. It's really been our money maker, but it was a classic Southern recipe. I'd love to say we invented it, but it was just an old family recipe. I don't know if you can ever figure out who made the very first one, but we certainly made it famous.
What was it? You were born in a suburb of Atlanta, but early in your life, your dad was a congressman. You went to Washington. What was that like? A Southern girl, having those first 10, 12 years of growing up in Washington. What was that like? Did you go? Did he commute back and forth? Did the family move to Washington? What was that like?
Yeah, so I actually was born in Dodge County Hospital in Eastman, Georgia. So we're from Eastman. We still have our distribution center for Stuckey's there. But we commuted a lot, but we moved to DC. And I was a year old when we moved. So I don't have a lot of strong memories of, certainly I didn't grow up in Eastman, but we went down there all the time. I mean, my dad was constantly campaigning. He was up for re-election every other year, but always campaigning. It's a hard life being in Congress if you have a family. What I remember, even though I didn't, I grew up in DC, I had a Southern family, and I do remember in school they made fun of me for saying yes, ma'am, and no, sir to my teachers. And the principal brought my mother in and said, your kids can't be doing that. Excuse me. My mom said, we are from the South, and we are saying sir and ma'am, thank you very much. And she told me, you are saying sir and ma'am. And I did. And I live in Atlanta now, and my kids say sir and ma'am, and the other kids do too, even Atlanta. I know Atlanta is different from the rest of the state, but still, my kids didn't get made fun of for saying sir and ma'am. It's important. I think those basic manners make a difference. I'm very proud of my mother for kind of standing up, and it's not a bad thing necessarily to be made fun of a little bit as a kid. It gives you tough skin.
Yeah, it gives you some tough skin. Yeah, I actually live in Valdosta, so it's that yes sir, yes ma'am. It just rolls off of the tongue in South Georgia. That's just the way it
Yeah.
is. And it sounds really nice.
Y'all
that
sound so
standpoint.
much better than you guys. Like my friends would say, you guys. I'm like, that just sounds harsh. Y'all.
Well, that's, I still fall into my Detroit days and say you guys sometimes. I always referred to my older sisters as the kids. I mean,
You
it's
kids or
it's
whatever.
just the way we're. How
Well, it's
did
because the English language is faulty. There's not I studied French in college. Like there is not what you find in other languages where there is a plural for you. And so you have to say you all, you guys, you kids, whatever. Use like our language is flawed and it's filling a very basic need. And so I'm actually a big advocate for like making y'all officially a appropriate, proper way to speak. You need that.
when we get the pecan to be the country's nut,
Yeah.
right? Put those two together and get them both done at the same time. That would be
Pecan log
great.
rolls, y'all.
That's the way it has to go. That's the way it is. When was that that moment that you knew that I am going back into the family business? I am going into the family business. When did that happen, and what was that moment like? And what was the discussion with your dad when that took place? Because that's a lot of people go through that.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So like I said earlier, I'm not your typical third generation family member that inherited a company. I bought it, and I bought it in distress. And also it cracks me up when people say I'm an heiress. And I think, well, even if I was an heiress, I'm not Paris Hilton, right? Like I inherited, if I did, what I got was rubber snakes and pecan log rolls and snow domes and a bunch of kitschy souvenirs. Like that's my inheritance.
And
but
some Britney Spears T-shirts I saw.
Britney Spears T-shirts, which we sold those. I love that documentary on her. Like she's making a comeback and we're selling her shirts. But I'm proud of that. I'm proud, you embrace it. You embrace what you are. If life gives you rubber alligators, that's what you sell. So I knew pretty early on, it didn't take me a whole lot of vetting. I spent about 30 days consulting with financial experts about the state of the company and whether the asking price was good. And we went back and forth. And I got a couple of advisors who said, absolutely do not do this. It's a terrible investment. And because I kept shopping around to different financial advisors, it made me realize I wanted to do this. It wasn't like this necessarily this aha moment. It was more, I love hearing playing with my plant, but I kept going to advisors till I got one who said, wow, this is a great brand. Like you're buying the trademark and that's worth something. And you should do this. Just be aware, eyes wide open. You're going to have to do a lot of work and you got to turn it around. You got to figure out a strategy because this is not working. It's not profitable. So the guy who said I should do it also said, but do it knowing what you're getting into. And even then, I like to say naivete is a really important skill that we should all embrace, because had I not been slightly naive, I think I still would have done it, but it's daunting. Like I did not realize how much work there was involved. You also ask about the
interaction with your dad.
My dad, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so my dad was not necessarily what you think. He said, you've never even run a lemonade stand. What makes you think you can run Stuckey's?
Wow. Okay.
It's like for $130,000 in debt. What makes you think you can do this? And my father loves me. We have a very good relationship, but he can be tough. And his father was tough on him. So I think you see that repeat. And I think he was just like trying in a way, he was trying to protect me. Like, what makes you think you can, like, really? Are you going to do this? Like, okay.
Throw down a challenge.
Yeah. So he took me back in his study and shut the door. That's when I knew this was like a conversation. He shut the door and he's like, what makes you think you can do this? And I'm like, I can't run a lemonade stand. I never have run a lemonade stand, but I can run Stuckey's. That's what I told him. I was like, I know this brand. I can tell the story of the brand. And he does repeatedly tell me, I get good, and I get all sorts of advice from him. And honestly, I take some of it, and others I don't. And the advice that he tells me that I frankly don't take is, he's like, you're spending way too much money telling these stories and branding the company. And I'm like, no, that's what's selling the brand. Like, that's how we're driving sales. It's not being salesy. It's telling the story of the brand. And I don't think he's made that connection, but my grandfather did that. And so it's a bit of a generation skipping thing. The really great advice he has given me that I absolutely follow is, what's your cash flow? He's always asking about that. And he's right. Like, there's so many of these companies these days. I think WeWork, if you haven't seen that documentary, you should. It's like such a cautionary tale. It just grew and grew and grew. And he talk about a storyteller. He was weaving a story, but it wasn't true. And the company was like ridiculously profitable on paper, but like, where was the cash flow? So my dad's absolutely right. Like, are you able to pay all your bills every month? What's your monthly nut? What's your burn rate? What's your cash on hand? So I really respect him for that. And I do keep him in the loop. He is aware of what's going on. I do seek out his advice, but yeah,
is he still the chairman of the board, or?
No.
Nope. He's totally done with it.
Completely uninvolved. Actually, he had made a loan to the company, and I paid that off within 9 months because I just wanted a clean start. I think in order for me to lead, I needed to be in charge. And now I do have a business partner, but people say, well, how do you make family businesses work? Sometimes it's not having the family as involved. I think it can be fraught with conflict if you have, maybe 5 family members running it. It could work really well too. It's all about the personality and the structure and how you work together. But I knew it would have just caused a lot of friction. And, I sat my dad down and I said, I can have a father or I can have a business partner, but I can't have both. What do you want? And I said, I will completely buy you out. Because initially I just bought out his partners. I didn't own everything. He had 51%, and he sold me his 51% once I started turning a profit, which was in 6 months. He's like, okay, I think you can do this. I'll sell.
Do you have siblings, or?
I do. I have 3 brothers.
Have they ever been involved in the business at all?
Yeah, no, they're not interested. I called them and they're doing great things. They're living their lives. They did not want to do this. One is an artist in Los Angeles. One is a recording engineer and a video producer. He commutes. He goes back and forth between Georgia and LA, but he's been out in LA working some jobs. And then my brother Billy is largely retired, but he did a variety of things. He had an insurance company. He had a liquor store for many years, and just had different things that he did in his life. And they're all super supportive. We have a great relationship, but they weren't interested.
Quickly, how do your kids feel about mom rebuilding this company?
It's kind of mixed. I think they like it. I think sometimes seeing the long hours, they're, of course, they would like it if I maybe had more time with them, but I certainly do spend a ton of time with them, especially now that COVID has hit and I'm home. They're teenagers. Robert's in college, sophomore at Auburn, and Beverly's still in high school. She's a freshman in high school. So, Stephanie? Yeah, I'm a single mom, so a lot of time with them. They're at the house with me. But there is no pressure whatsoever for them to run the company someday. They will certainly own part of the company, but they may not run it. We may have outside managers.
I want to thank you for being here today, and I'd like to bring you back again down the road to get a catch up to see where Stuckey's is at that time, because it's been a pleasure having you with us, and I appreciate it very much, you taking the time, spend the entire hour with us.
Thank you. I've learned a lot. You've asked some great questions. It really sort of made me think about how we might turn some things around internally. So yes, have me back. Hopefully
I got a bunch more too. So
Yeah.
we went off on some tangents and didn't get there.
I love it.
But we will have you back. And
bring
we
me
come
back
to
in a
you
year. We'll see where we are.
every Thursday. We're live here at the Coaches Podcast Room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill at Celebration Point, a lovely place here in Gainesville, Florida. And for my wonderful producer, Evan Miller, and our technician and man about town sitting outside the glass ceiling there, Freddie Wiebe, appreciate you very much for spending some time with us. And we'll see you next week here on Motivation U, the podcast.